Hey strangers, you may or may not know that I do indeed have two other podcasts, one of which is called Shut the Fuck Up, Nick Lachey, which I host with the inimitable Ellen Marsh.
Can I just ask you a quick question? I know we need to make this fast, but like, why would they not know of our podcast?
Well, because
It's like the best Love is Blind recap podcast there is out there.
Mm-hmm.
No one has said that like officially, but like my mom and other friends text me that.
Right.
So like they should know that you have another podcast called Shut the Fuck Up, Nick Lachey, which recaps all of the seasons of Love is Blind, maybe the best reality show to ever hit the airwaves.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you're 100% right. I just can't control what my listeners do and don't listen to. And I have, a true crime audience. And like, they might not be into Love is Blind, but that's where they're wrong.
Right, because it is truly a crime.
Love is Blind is a crime, not only against humanity, but against me and Ellen, because let me tell you how hard we work to get these incredible recap episodes out to you. And we have really exciting news. Tell them, Ellen.
We're going to 4 cities carefully chosen by the only cities that were available to have us come to their cities.
That's right.
Nonetheless, carefully chosen. October 6th, we're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina. Then tell them where we're going to be on the 15th of October, Daisy.
Boy, let me tell you, we're going to be in Indianapolis.
It's great there. I hear they've got great wings. On the 18th, we're going to go to Atlanta, Georgia.
And then on October 27th, we're going to be in the city of brotherly love.
Poughkeepsie.
What?
What is it? What did you say?
The city of brotherly love is
Poughkeepsie.
Philly.
Philly. Right, okay.
Philadelphia.
I'll go to Philly. I will go to
Great.
Philly.
Please don't go to-
worry. I
don't go to
might have
Poughkeepsie.
booked my train to Poughkeepsie, but I'm going to fix that.
Okay.
We're going to be covering season 7 of Love is Blind. I know you're asking yourself, how is that even possible, Ellen and Daisy? You are only 2 phenomenal women. That seems like a big feat.
Frankly, we are asking ourselves the same question, but we are going to do it. In each city, every show is going to be different from the one before it and the one after it. We are going to be covering multiple episodes per city, per show.
We don't know what's going to come out of our mouths until it's already out. That alone should make you get a ticket. And if you do want to get a ticket, head on over to GrabBag, click the link tree, choose your city. Now, if you don't come to every city because it's going to be different, we're going to judge you, but not harshly.
Yeah, I mean, if a bunch of stoners can follow bare naked ladies around the country, why can't you follow me and Ellen Marsh?
It's honestly, I don't understand.
We
it.
are bare naked ladies.
That was the other surprise. Surprise! So please come and see us live for Shut the Fuck Up, Nick Lachey. It's going to be hilarious, maybe a little stupid, but we're going to be there.
Head on over to patreon.com/grabbagcollab and grab tickets for any one of our 4 live shows. You can also find a link to the tickets on my Instagram at Daisy Egan.
And we can't wait to see you there.
Can't wait to see you in Indianapolis. Strangers, just some quick housekeeping before we jump in. I know last week I said I would be doing an episode about Hitler this week, but there has been a small programmatic change. I've been wrestling with that script because the nature of it is pretty controversial and I want to make sure it's right before it goes out into the world. So, this week's episode is not about Hitler, which, one more week without Hitler is a good week in my book. Enjoy today's non-Hitler themed episode. How can someone get away with murder? Beyond the question of evidence, how can someone live with themselves carrying around such an awful secret? Can someone really get away with murder? Welcome to Strange and Unexplained with me, Daisy Egan. My favorite book when I was 17 was Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. In it, a desperate man commits a robbery and murder he believes will better his life. Dostoevsky's killer had the benefit of living in a time before security cameras, cell phones, and DNA technology. And it doesn't take long for Raskolnikov to become absolutely consumed by the consequences of his heinous crime. He becomes tormented, not only by the relentless pursuit of the investigators on the case, but by the guilt that practically eats him alive. But maybe Dostoevsky was wrong. Maybe some people can commit the most unthinkable of acts and walk away to live a life completely unbothered. Rhoda McFarland wasn't supposed to be working on the morning of February 2nd, 2008. But her coworker had called out with a sick kid, so Rhoda went into the Lane Bryant in Tinley Park, a suburb of Chicago, to give her coworker Martha some help. They were the only two working that morning. The two women opened the store at 10 a.m. Very shortly after opening, a man came in with a stack of papers, claiming to be a delivery man. But Rhoda hadn't noticed any deliveries on the day's schedule, so she called another branch to see if she could clear up the confusion. By then, two customers had come in and were browsing the racks. And then, sometime around 10:15, the man pulled out a .40 caliber Glock and announced he was robbing the store and the women in it. The man led the women into the back of the store, demanding all the cash in the registers, the women's purses, and all visible jewelry. At some point, he grabbed some underwear off a rack, presumably to cover the women's faces. While the four women were being held, two other customers, completely unaware of what was going on, came into the shop. They were both quickly led to the back of the store as well. At 10:44, possibly while the man was distracted by the newcomers, Rhoda used her store headset, which was Bluetooth enabled, to call 911. Her call originally went to the Will County Sheriff's Office, but was transferred to Tinley Park PD. Fortunately, there was an on-duty officer at a target only a few hundred yards from the Lane Bryant. By the time the officer arrived on the scene, only a few minutes after Rhoda made the call, 5 of the 6 women were dead, and the shooter was nowhere to be found. Strangers, Quince is back to help you get ready for sweater weather. Quince has everything you need to make your fall cozy, warm, and fashionable. Whether you're looking for the softest, coziest cashmere pullover hoodie, a sleek leather blazer, or a cashmere throw, Quince has everything you need for 50 to 80% off. That's because Quince partners directly with manufacturers to cut out the middleman. If you're someone who, God forbid, has to leave the house for work, Quince has a whole line of office wear. For me, I'm slowly shaping my life so that I never have to leave the house again. So I'm stocking up on super soft fleece joggers, not, of course, for actual jogging, along with some crew knit pullovers and cashmere socks. My ultimate goal is to just switch from daytime to nighttime pajamas in perpetuity all fall and winter. Life is scary. You might as well make yourself as comfy as possible while you're still looking Zoom-worthy and without breaking the bank. Also, did you know that silk helps keep you warm? With Quince's collection of washable silk t-shirts, pants, blouses, dresses, and loungewear, you can actually leave your house and look sleek and gorgeous and still be cozy and warm. Plus, you can do it with a clean conscience because Quince only partners with manufacturers who maintain ethical and sustainable practices. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/strange for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/strange to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/strange. Rhoda McFarland was 42 years old. She was an ordained minister and began working at Lane Bryant after her church in Crest Hill shut down. While serving as a manager at the Lane Bryant for 2 years, she was also associate pastor at Embassy Christian Center. Friends remembered her as a kind and compassionate person who wanted to help everyone. Those who knew her believed she may have been trying to help the shooter in her last moments. In a piece in the Herald News, a friend said, quote, "I think to the end, Rhoda might have even tried to help him, even with her last breath. I believe she would have been forgiving him and trying to help him. That's what gives me peace in all of this." End quote. I'm not entirely sure what this means, but one can assume they meant she was trying to give him some kind of counsel or comfort, which I would imagine would have been less about helping him and more about helping the other women he was holding hostage. Rhoda served in the U.S. Air Force. After that, she started a program called Princess Unveiled that taught young girls etiquette and other skills so they could become productive women. She was planning on starting more programs like this at other churches. The other employee at the store that morning, Martha, was the only one to survive the attack. The only information anyone has on what transpired inside the store is from Martha. Martha is actually not her real name. Apparently, when the shooter took aim at her and pulled the trigger, she managed to turn her head at just the right moment so the bullet only grazed her neck. She somehow had the wherewithal to pretend to be dead in hopes the shooter wouldn't fire at her again. It worked. She was rushed to the hospital where she was treated and only stayed a day before being released. Despite her anonymity, however, somehow a reporter at a newspaper in Kentucky tracked down Martha's family. They said she was a 33-year-old nursing student at the time of the shooting, and that she only worked weekends. Connie Woolfolk was a 37-year-old single mother with 2 sons, a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old with spina bifida. Connie and her mother, who lived with her, had recently opened a mortgage company together, and she was working the graveyard shift at the Target near the Lane Bryant. She had just had a mani-pedi and was shopping for an outfit to wear for a rare girls' night out. Connie had sustained a lot of bruises in the attack and had blood under her fingernails, suggesting she had fought back before being shot in the head. Former co-workers remembered her as being positive, upbeat, and great at mediating conflict in the office. She was a strong public speaker and a grant writer. Her friends remembered her as having strong faith and creativity. Sarah Jafransky was the youngest of the victims. Only 22 years old, she had just graduated from college that year. She landed a job as an accountant for a company in Chicago and was shopping for outfits for work. She had been a mathlete in high school, and she and her boyfriend were both homebodies, preferring board games to going out. Carrie Hudek-Cuso was a 33-year-old high school social worker and golf coach at the high school she had attended, where, coincidentally, Connie Woolfolk's older son attended. She had just gotten married the year before. Carrie worked with the most troubled students in the school. She and her husband Tony were getting ready to try to grow their family. He said she was out that morning to pick up presents from her mom and sister-in-law's house for a family birthday party, and then stopped in at Lane Bryant to get a new shawl to wear for a night out with Tony in Chicago that night after the party. The couple rarely went out because he was in the middle of pursuing a master's degree. Jennifer Bishop was an ICU nurse and was recently promoted to charge nurse at Memorial Hospital, where she worked for over a decade. Her colleagues remembered her as being a compassionate, caring, efficient, and knowledgeable nurse. She was also the mother of 3 young children, the oldest aged 7 and the youngest aged just 6 months at the time. She and her husband were in town from South Bend, Indiana for a conference. She went shopping to pass some time. She was at Lane Bryant using a gift card she'd gotten for her 34th birthday just a few days before. It's always weird to describe victims in this way. Someone's whole life condensed down to a few sentences. All their complexities, all their loved ones, all their triumphs and heartbreak. Not to mention the many years they all could have had left to live. All just boiled down to a few facts. Aside from Martha, these women kind of made the random choice to go into the store that morning. Rhoda didn't have to cover her co-worker who couldn't make it. If the other employee's son hadn't been sick, Rhoda wouldn't have been there. If Connie Woolfolk hadn't been working nights at the nearby Target, would she have been in the Lane Bryant that morning? If Carrie and her husband weren't going on a date that night, would she have been in the store? If Sarah hadn't just gotten a new job, would she have been there? 6 women with full stories, now forever connected by this one horrific event. According to a piece from the Herald Bulletin on February 6th, just after the attack, Martha herself issued a statement that said, in part, the attack was, quote, an unspeakable tragedy and a horrific crime that ripped our worlds apart, end quote. Of the other women who endured the ordeal with her and ultimately didn't survive, she said they were, quote, 5 of the bravest women I have ever met. My deepest sympathies and condolences go out to their families and friends. Please know that during the unfathomable events of the day, their thoughts were focused on you and coming home. My heart aches that they were unable to do so." End quote. Right away, investigators got to work trying to track down the attacker. The one survivor of the shooting, Martha, described the shooter as a 5'9" to 6', medium to dark-skinned black man between 25 and 35 years old, weighing between 200 and 230 pounds, with puffy cornrows. According to one description, he was well-groomed and known to have one braid laying over the right side of his face at cheek level with 4 light green beads on the end of it. The braids on his head were pulled straight back. It hardly matters anymore what the man was wearing at the time. It was 16 years ago at this point. His relatively nondescript clothes likely wouldn't have stuck out. The only possible unique identifier were his jeans, which had a rhinestone design resembling the letter G on the back pockets. I Googled that description, and the closest thing I could find to a rhinestone G on the back pocket was a brand named Jack David, but they don't make men's jeans. And, sure, maybe the guy was wearing women's jeans, but I doubt it. It's possible it was a fleur-de-lis, but it's hard to find men's jeans with that design in rhinestone either, especially not one that could be mistaken for a G. Then again, Martha was in the middle of probably the most traumatic event of her life, and it's doubtful her memory was perfect. But again, it was 16 years ago. Even his hairstyle probably changed pretty soon after this. I would imagine he at least knew to take the beads out of his hair and probably change up the whole style altogether. Listen, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the guy probably wasn't the sharpest cookie in the sandwich drawer. Generally, one commits armed robbery with the intention of getting money, and if that was his aim, one wonders why he chose a Lane Bryant. For one thing, most customers pay with credit or gift cards. Secondly, it's not like Lane Bryant is a high-end store. Most of their stuff is priced around $50 or less. Also, the store had just opened that morning, so even if people usually dropped huge wads of cash there, they wouldn't have by that time of day. The registers would have been empty. In all, he walked off with about $200 and whatever jewelry the women had been wearing. Some have speculated that he might have been a person with a substance abuse disorder, which might explain the weird choice of store. Maybe he was just trying to get a quick fix, but I don't know. A person with a substance abuse disorder who would resort to robbing a Lane Bryant at 10 in the morning probably wouldn't be well-groomed. If they were awake at 10 in the morning, one has to assume they likely had not yet been to sleep. I'm just saying, it's unlikely that someone trying to score money for drugs using a loaded Glock would be awake and well-groomed at that time of day. Please understand that I'm not throwing shade on the person with the disorder. In general, obviously I'm throwing shade on this particular person, but not people with this disorder in general. But rather pointing out the typical behaviors of people with such a high level of the disorder that they would resort to armed robbery and murder. An unnamed source from the Tinley Park PD told reporters that the man intended to keep robbing whoever came into the store, but that plan changed when Rhoda called 911. I don't know how they could have known that unless the man had, like a Bond villain, explained his plan to his victims before he killed them. Still others have speculated that the man wasn't a man at all, but rather a masculine-looking woman who was a disgruntled former employee at the store. There's no evidence for this. As far as I know, they couldn't find a former employee who fit that description. In general, it's agreed that Rhoda's 911 call, ironically and tragically, may have been the thing that prompted the man to kill the women. The shooter was gone by the time the first officer got to the scene, just a couple of minutes after Rhoda called 911. But surely there was CC footage. The store itself didn't have cameras, but surely other stores in the popular strip mall had picked something up. Surely someone saw a suspicious person running from the store. Surely someone noticed a car speeding away through the parking lot? Somehow, stranger, there was nothing. No footage, no witnesses other than Martha, no screeching tires, nothing. 1 minute he was there raining terror down on these 6 unsuspecting women, and the next minute he was gone. Strangers, we have a new sponsor. ZBiotics is a pre-alcohol prebiotic drink that helps break down the toxins in your gut that form when you drink alcohol and that cause you to have a pretty gnarly next morning. It's the toxic byproduct in your gut, not dehydration, that is to thank for that bad morning. ZBiotics is a proactive solution to a great morning, rather than post-gaming with a bunch of electrolytes or greasy foods. Now, you know me, stranger, I'm not a big drinker anymore. I'm a one-drink wonder these days, but it seems no matter how much or little I drink, I always end up feeling it the next morning. I've tried ZBiotics twice now, and both times I woke up ready to take on the next day. In fact, ZBiotics was so effective that I had no trouble keeping up with my other podcast partner, Ellen Marsh, while we spent the day writing our new live show for our tour. Without ZBiotics, even after only a couple of glasses of white wine the night before, I would have slept till noon and been a real grumble pants all morning. Listen, I'm not telling you with ZBiotics you can drink more. That's not the point. Drink responsibly. We're all adults here. The days of drinking until you can't see straight are over. That's gross. But for a lot of us, even that one glass of wine or a couple cocktails means a rough morning. With ZBiotics, you can enjoy a night out and not hate the morning after. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondered what it was actually like. Now that I've tried it, I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/strange to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Strange at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/strange and use the code STRANGE at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. Immediately after the shooting, more than 50 detectives were working the case with patrols added to the area and all security footage they could find collected. A search radius of 1.5 miles was set to try to find any surveillance footage. The immediate area was placed on lockdown while they searched until they were confident the perpetrator had fled out of the area. During their initial search of the area, police confronted Sean Tyus, a man sitting in his parked car waiting for his girlfriend in the parking lot of the nearby Target. Tyus, it seems, fit the description Martha had given police, insofar that he was a black man. To be fair, I suppose the description Martha gave was pretty generic, except for the cornrows and beads. Police took Tyus in, examined the bottoms of his shoes, and kept asking him where the gun was and if he took the beads out of his hair. He informed them that police were already swarming the plaza when he arrived. After an hour of questioning, he was finally released. Footage from the nearby Target parking lot was gathered, and investigators brought in NASA scientists to help them analyze the blurry footage. This led them to 2 cars, a dark sedan and an SUV that pulled up at 10:39 and 10:40 respectively, just a few minutes before the 911 call, and fled just a few minutes later at 10:45 a.m., likely with the shooter in one of them, since he was gone by the time the first officer arrived 1 minute after the call ended. This led investigators to believe that at least 3 people were involved. What's most strange about this is that there seems to be no mention of anyone leaving the store and getting into one of the waiting cars. Maybe he managed to run out a back door into a loading area? The case was featured on America's Most Wanted just 2 weeks after the murders. More than 200 tips came in, very quickly. 1 week after the murders, Tinley Park PD claimed they logged over 2,000 hours on the case. It seems that the only evidence left behind was one or more spent bullet casings. It would seem, though, that fingerprints couldn't be recovered from the casings. Indeed, no fingerprints from the suspect were found on the scene at all. On February 8th, Tinley Park PD announced an initial reward leading to an arrest of $55,000. The press release also alerted the public that police would be at the strip mall the following day, but would not be talking to the media. I'm sure police had been there since the murder, so it's a little odd to me that they made it known that they'd be there on the 9th, but perhaps they were trying to draw the suspect out? Oftentimes, perpetrators will insert themselves into investigations. Apparently, that didn't happen this time. On February 9th, presumably while police were back at the store, dive teams were searching the frozen ponds and streams for anything that may have been connected to the case. Grid searches of the roads and interstates were being conducted, and police announced there was a, quote, very large quantity of evidence collected at the scene, end quote, still being tested. That was the last daily press conference, but police assured the media and the public that announcements and press conferences would be held if there were any updates to the case. By April 4th, anonymous donations had increased the reward to $100,000. However, the goalpost for payout was now a conviction, not just an arrest. Police had collected 2,300 tips, and 37 seconds of the audio of the 911 call was made available to the public via a call-in number. Rhoda used her cell phone, and you can hear her whispering her answers to the 911 dispatcher to give the store and location information before the line goes dead. Apparently, the shooter's voice could be heard on the call. Police hoped someone might recognize the voice. Detectives Ray Violetto and his partner Tom Paulus led the investigation. Violetto had been with the Tinley Park PD for about a decade in 2008. From 2008 to 2017, this was his only case. Police dug into the backgrounds of the women. Perhaps something from their pasts could lead them to a suspect. Perhaps one of them was targeted and the others were collateral damage. The only thing they found that could have been a potential lead was that Rhoda had left her previous church over financial disagreements. But when they tracked down church leadership at their new church in Texas, it was nothing. Investigators canvassed hair salons in the hopes of finding one that might have done the perpetrator's hair. None were found. Rumors went around that Martha had pointed out a coffee cup the killer had used during the ordeal, but that story was never confirmed by police. The DNA collected from under Connie's nails also led nowhere. Whoever's DNA was left behind when Connie fought for her life, they didn't have a file in the system, which led investigators to believe the killer had no prior record. This seems wild to me. How does someone go from no criminal record to murdering 5 women and leaving another for dead over a couple $100? That seems like a really big leap on the ladder of crimes. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, and the choice of the Lane Bryant at 10 in the morning certainly does suggest someone who was very unfamiliar with armed robbery. However, leaving practically no evidence behind does not suggest this person had no idea what he was doing. Five years later, a piece on a local news station reported that police were no closer to finding fingerprints. Quote, investigators have gone as far as London to check new fingerprint technology on shell casings. The village has spent nearly $2 million. Still, no suspect. Yet, there is hope. End quote. Criminal profilers Greg McCrary and Clint Van Sant, who had assisted on the Unabomber case, drew up a profile of this perpetrator, which said that the details of the case suggested the killer had been previously incarcerated. They believed he may have been so unwilling to return to prison that he chose to murder all the witnesses to his crime. Though I suppose not unwilling enough to not commit the crime in the first place. The profile also said that the killer thinks he has been mistreated by society. He may have known one of the victims and so targeted her, pulling the trigger to prevent identification, and had a, quote, kill one, have to kill them all, end quote, thought process. He would never come back to the area and is likely to kill again, especially if he thinks that person will help the cops catch him. Van Sant told the Chicago Sun-Times, quote, if he, the gunman, feels that anyone is in a position to help police catch him, he will kill again, even if it is his girlfriend or a relative or someone else close to him. He's still very dangerous, end quote. But it's not like there was a spate of murders following this one. If a few people were suddenly murdered after this and it was found they all had a common connection in this one person, surely they would have been able to piece that together? It's possible also that the killer ended up in prison after the murders for something unrelated, and that's why he couldn't be found out in the wild. And unless police are being mum about it, if the guy was arrested afterward for an unrelated crime, wouldn't police have been suspicious if he matched the description Martha gave? Wouldn't we have heard about it? Wouldn't there have been some talk in the press about it? And here we are, 16 years later, and this guy never peeped a word of it to anyone in all that time? And assuming those two cars caught on the security footage were involved, that's at least two other people who never let anything slip in all this time. Strangers, Dinnerly is back. Dinnerly is the most affordable meal kit I've come across. If you're in the market for a meal kit that costs as low as $2.99 a meal and is easy and delicious, you need to try Dinnerly. With a wide variety of rotating menu items that are customizable, there is something for every kind of appetite. You can swap out proteins, swap in low-carb sides, or make a dish vegetarian. They are the only meal kit with gluten-free customizations. Dinnerly also has a complete market for grocery essentials. Stocked with over 125 items, their market is seasonably updated and changes weekly. You can shop for fresh produce, baked goods, ready-to-heat meals, and much more. With just a few clicks, grocery shopping is done and comes delivered directly to your door. And with Dinnerly, you aren't locked in long-term. Dinnerly's flexible subscription allows you to edit, pause, or cancel your boxes anytime. With recipes from all across the globe, you can try new cuisines without the cost of takeout or going out to eat. Plus, you get the benefit of knowing exactly what ingredients are going into each meal. My family and I loved the chicken shawarma burgers. They were so delicious and easy to make. And the mushroom and pea risotto was easy and a perfect meal for a cool fall evening. The creamy butternut squash ravioli was restaurant quality without the price or inconvenience of actually having to leave my house. The recipes are super easy to make, so you can make them with your kids. Who knows? You just might inspire your little one to become the next top chef. Make cooking exciting, affordable, and easy with Dinnerly. Head to dinnerly.com/offer/strange and use code STRANGE for up to 25 free meals. Once again, that's dinnerly.com/offer/strange for up to 25 free meals. And make sure you use my promo code STRANGE so they know I sent you. Strangers, I know a lot of you took my advice last week and checked out Pretend, Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey. Now the rest of you need to check it out. I am telling you, this podcast is bananas. The things this woman has gotten away with over the years and how she puts her head down at night and lives with what she's done is beyond me. Host and producer Javier Leiva is doggedly uncovering one scandal after another with this woman. Frankly, I'm scared for his safety. And not for nothing, but Humphrey has already tried to go after him for the podcast. It has been so riveting listening to Leiva relay the story as it unfolds. Check out Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey, binge all the episodes, and then dig into earlier seasons of Pretend. While you're there, subscribe, download, and leave him a review. He's an independent podcaster doing amazing work. "16 years on, somehow police are no closer to solving this case than they were in 2008. A piece on the website Patch in 2018 quoted Violetto as saying that there were, quote, a lot of pieces to the puzzle, end quote. But, the piece went on, he, quote, believes uncovering a final missing piece could lead to an arrest and close the case. What that elusive piece is and how it fits into the overall investigation isn't something Violetto will reveal, end quote. By that point, the tips had taken them to Texas, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and D.C. In 2018, a new 3D version of the sketch was released. Even 10 years later, police were still receiving 1 to 2 new tips a week. New technology was used to isolate the man's voice on the 911 call, but it is still very difficult to understand what he's saying. Police believe the man can be heard saying, quote, "You're lucky, I'm losing it," end quote, at one point on the 911 call. A local CBS affiliate from February of this year reported that current Tinley Park Police Chief Tom Tilton is making sure that the case is always being investigated and has the resources needed to investigate the tips that are still coming in, especially the use of new technologies as they become available. In 2023, a local news affiliate reported police continue to review the recordings of the killer's voice to see if anything new can be obtained from it. While some of the 911 tape has been released to the public, there is apparently more audio that police have not released. Former U.S. Marshal Service Supervisory Investigator Ed Farrell, who now owns a company called Silver Star Protection Group, has made available equipment that can help track electronic footprints that might lead to the shooter. A retired police commander for the Chicago PD believes the case hasn't been solved yet because he thinks the shooter is dead, and there is no viable connection to be found between him and the crime. Of course, one would hope that if someone turned up dead who matched the description of the killer, they might have tested his DNA against what was found under Connie's fingernails. Unless he died and no one ever found the body. I know that happens, but, what are the odds that this killer then died and was never found? And what about the people in the cars that pulled up and sped away? Did they die too? It could also be that he left town immediately, since Tinley Park is near I-80. So maybe it was someone just passing through and chose the store at random? But again, 16 years is an awful long time to keep a secret this horrific to oneself, I would imagine. I have no idea, of course. I cannot begin to put myself in the mindset of someone who could even begin to commit a crime such as this one. In 2016, Violetto took the case to the VDOC Society, a group of former law enforcement officials and forensic and criminal experts who assist with unsolved cases. They didn't have anything of too much use to offer besides validating the work the detectives had already done. Whatever suggestions they did give for moving forward clearly didn't help. More than 7,300 tips were received in the first 10 years of the investigation. Various agencies have stepped in to assist, including the Illinois State Police, FBI, Secret Service, and NASA. I have no idea why the Secret Service would have gotten involved, but then again, I have no idea why a lot of things happen. Investigators still hold out hope that someone will eventually bring that missing piece to the puzzle, either because of the reward money, which sits at $100,000, or a guilty conscience. It's hard to imagine that upwards of 3 people participated in a robbery that yielded just around $200, and none of them have come forward to point the finger at the killer to reap $100,000. In 2021, Detective Violetto retired, and his partner Paulus was promoted to commander of the department's patrol division. Detective Jeff Graves and Roger Davison were put in charge of the case. According to the Chicago Tribune, Graves and Davison hope that fresh eyes on everything will help find something that may have been overlooked initially in the rapid influx of tips and because of the large number of detectives initially on the case and in the initial aftermath. There is one entire room dedicated to the case, and all the evidence is being digitized. In the 16 years since the murders, there have been close to 8,000 tips received, and all are thoroughly investigated. The most recent village budget has requested $60,000 for the police department, and it is all dedicated to paying for resources and solving this case, including paying for an outside analyst to help with tips that come in. And after all of this, the case is still open. 5 women murdered, and 1 woman whose life was forever changed. All over $200 and some jewelry. At least one person is out there who knows what happened. Unless the 2 cars that pulled up at 10:39 and 10:40 just as the 911 call was being placed and sped away at 10:45 just a minute after the call ended really had nothing to do with what was happening inside that Lane Bryant that morning, at least 2 other people know what happened. Martha herself knows what happened, and in all those years never once came across the killer. I saw a lantern fly the other day, and despite the fact that I know you're supposed to kill them on sight, I couldn't bring myself to do it. The guilt I would have felt would have been too much. I hit a squirrel once with my car, and I still lay awake at night feeling horrible about it. Hell, I feel bad for saying something mean to a classmate in 3rd grade. How someone could kill 5 people and just go through the rest of their lives as though nothing happened is something that I cannot wrap my head around. I can only hope the guilt that person walks around with has made their lives a living hell. It would be a small price to pay for taking 5 lives, but at least it would be something. Next time on Strange and Unexplained, I'm going to bring you that Hitler episode. I think. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost 100% positive. Stay tuned and find out. Strange and Unexplained is a production of Three Goose Entertainment with help from Grab Bag Collab. This episode was written by me, Daisy Egan, with research by the Strange Research Squad. Sound engineering and mixing by Henry Lavoie. If you have an idea for an episode, head to our website, strangeandunexplainedpod.com, and fill out the contact form. I will write back. For more amazing content, join us at patreon.com/grabbagcollab, where for just $5 a month, you get all the Grab Bag exclusive shows, and for $8, you get those, plus Amber Hunt's Crimes of the Centuries and Strange and Unexplained early and ad-free. Grab Bag is an all-female and non-binary owned profit share network where our contributors get to keep ownership of their shows. We strive to give a platform to those who might not be able to land themselves on a bigger network. Who knows, maybe you have a podcast idea you'd like to pitch to Grab Bag. We've got live recordings, watch parties, book clubs, and more. Why there's so much going on over at Grab Bag, you'll wonder if we missed the memo on how capitalism works. Join me on Instagram at SNUPod, Daisy Egan, and Grab Bag Collab. Check out my other 2 podcasts, Dear Daisy, a podcast about secrets, and Shut the Fuck Up, Nick Lachey with Ellen Marsh, now going on tour. Or head to the Facebook page and join in the conversation. If you like the show, please visit a sponsor with our unique code, give us a quick review and 5 stars, subscribe, and download. And tell a friend. If you don't like the show, the name of the podcast is the Fox News Rundown. Stay strange.